In the last video, we looked at Zach Hadel and the circle of Newgrounds animators who found success and fame online or on television. However, there are some Newgrounds alumni who weren't so fortunate, and in recent years, we've seen their careers steadily decline into alcoholism, drug abuse, and run-ins with the law. One such case study is Stamper TV, who a decade ago could be pointed to as one of the premium up-and-coming content creators alongside the likes of OniNG and Psychic Pebbles. But sadly, his story doesn't have a happy ending like that of his colleagues, and that's why he's edited with distorted glitches and static effects. Today we'll be looking through his life and career and attempt to understand what exactly happened to Stamper, where it all went wrong, and if there is any, albeit slim, chance at redemption. William Andrew Stamper was born March 8, 1983 in Bethesda, Maryland, to veteran parents who now worked in law enforcement. Stamper's own accounts of his childhood seem to vary dramatically, with him in recent years framing his father as absent or abusive, yet this is seemingly contradicted by recordings of the two interacting.
Alexander Graham Bell.
No,
that was the phone.
He invented those crackers for
Which crackers?
the graham crackers. For sake.
Sorry, I didn't find. Okay, the light bulb.
His parents would divorce when he was young, and his mother would get a new boyfriend whom Stamper would talk fondly of. From what we know of his early life, he would often struggle to fit in, owing to his family's poor finances, getting bullied for being poor and overweight. With so much turbulence in his home life and also at school, Will would never even get as far as a high school diploma, dropping out without any formal academic qualifications to speak of. After leaving school, he would work multiple odd jobs, presumably trying to find a foothold from where he could start to build a sustainable career. Owing to the military background of his parents, one might think Stamper was brought up in a heavily disciplined environment. But through neglect or a deliberate effort to rebel against the pressures of his parents, Will Stamper would begin to engage in various sub-legal activities in his late teenage years, with him recounting firsthand an event where he walked into a game store and walked out with multiple Dreamcasts whilst the employees were on a smoke break. This is one of many anecdotes he's given concerning his late teenage misadventures.
Paulo went back to my dad's house and there was cops all over the place.
Like several?
Yeah, and then they interviewed us separately, and they interviewed him first, and they were like, and then he came out and he was like, don't tell him fucking anything. And I was like, yeah, man, I got your back. And then I went in there and I was like, it's a fake gun. We got it at Walmart and we already got rid of it. Actually, that was the last story.
On top of this, it was likely during this time he began to engage with alcohol and drugs, signaling the start of a lifelong vice that will frequently rear its ugly head throughout this story. I'm not trying to frame this as evidence for him being a criminal before he joined the internet. I think crime in your late teens is cracking character building, but it should illustrate that at a time in one's life where stability and a strong support network are essential for the transition to adult life, he was, from what it seems, pretty alone. In February of 2000, Stamper would create an account on the video/art hosting site Newgrounds. And here he would put his artistic talents to use by making a series of brief animations that he would upload together a few months later. I mean, I think he uploaded them together. Like, the listed time of uploads is minutes apart. Let's take a look at them. Interesting. Oh crap, quick side note, I should mention his early cartoons aren't actually standard Newgrounds videos. They're actually running in Flash, hence they have an integrated restart and terrible audio sync. But he did actually make a full Flash game, and let me say, this is possibly the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like a cross between Sleeping Dogs and Zelda CDI, let me present Street Life.
The following is rated R.
To the game's credit, Stamper would have made the game when he was 17 years old, and technically speaking, this is pretty damn impressive. I will also say though, this probably is what a 17-year-old imagines life as a gangster is like.
So what's going on? Hey motherfucker, don't talk to my So what's up? Man, I warned your punk ass.
I would call these early projects endearingly 2000s internet, and I don't mean that as an insult. You have to bear in mind the environment in which these projects were made. This wasn't just before YouTube or the Newgrounds animators famous today, but modern internet culture as we know it. There was no standard for what was funny, no in-jokes to reference, and certainly no promise that these animations would be seen by anyone beyond the small reach of Newgrounds. To put it in perspective, it would be 5 years until the first Ego Raptor video, and 8 years before the first Troll Face, and 1 year before, you know. He would move away from his parents, ending up in Florida. At this time, he would take up various entry-level jobs, including but not limited to working in a warehouse, a delivery driver, a salesman, and a douchebag. After working odd jobs for some time, he would begin to branch out into professional website design and online media, with him working for a handful of larger companies to establish their digital presence in the rapidly evolving internet. Some of these companies apparently included porn sites. He apparently made a lot of porn sites. So next time you decide to smack off, just remember among those brave pioneers who built the infrastructure necessary for JAV Volume 3, there was William Stamper. God bless you. In his free time, he would actually assist Newgrounds staff by redesigning elements of the site pro bono. So it's only understandable that at the earliest possibility, he was hired by Newgrounds in 2003 as lead media designer, with his first action being to totally redesign the front page, and then slowly working through the rest of the site, modernizing the entire experience for users. In 2004, he would move to the Philadelphia area so he could be closer to the Newgrounds offices, and increase the speed at which he could update the website. The official wiki on Newgrounds goes so far as to call the entire site Stamperized, as he continued to update the look, and even refresh previous redesigns done by himself months before. It really can't be emphasized how crucial Stamper was to the development of Newgrounds as an experience. Considering his changes came in the years just before the site saw its golden age, it wouldn't be far-fetched to say he was responsible in part for the success of the site. His gig at Newgrounds is likely what put him into contact with many of his later collaborators, such as Aaron Grump and Chris O'Neill. He would of course continue to create solo animations for his Newgrounds page, and I should probably talk about the content of some of these. I'll preface by saying edge in early internet cartoons is pretty much to be expected. It was simply just socially acceptable at the time, and people found it funny. Blame the culture of the internet and not those supplying the appetite, etc, etc. But Stamper's cartoons, shall we say, I'll just show it.
Were you working here last night at 11 o'clock?
Yeah.
Explain.
Now again, you only have to look at the comments to see that people found this funny. Stamper wasn't just going AWOL, but some of his other cartoons were explicitly pornographic in nature, and obviously I can't show those ones. There are so many levels of irony now in place, it's hard to tell if this was a joke or just genuinely porn, but regardless, it's clear he enjoyed shocking people with his animations.
Gross. Oh, come on. Where's your sense of humor?
Whilst on Newgrounds these type of videos were allowed and actively lauded by the community, this type of animation would eventually come around to bite him in the ass. He would go on to become one of the more well-known creators on the site, winning various fan awards as well as organising countless collaborative projects. If you can think of an iconic Newgrounds video, statistically Stamper was involved in some way, usually as a voice actor, also sometimes helping out behind the scenes with animation.
Wow, what a neat trick! I love clowns.
In 2003, the higher-ups at Newgrounds would form The Behemoth, a video game company based out of San Diego, built upon the creative spirit of Newgrounds and Flash games in general. Stamper would begin lending his talents to the company, creating music and voice acting in the 2008 game Castle Crashers, and would eventually be brought on board as an official member of the studio. In 2012, Stamper would officially leave Newgrounds in order to focus full-time on his role at The Behemoth, with this move coinciding with the mass exodus to YouTube that was occurring at the time. It's possible he saw this taking place and rationalized that working for The Behemoth would have more longevity than a position at the now declining Newgrounds website. In 2013, The Behemoth would release Battle Block Theatre, in which Stamper had his most notable role within the game project, voicing the narrator.
Wait a second. This isn't jail. This is prison. That's just as bad, if not worse. Oh, happy day. It's Hattie. And look, he's made some wonderful new friends. Ooh, and they got him a present. How thoughtful. Hey, wait a second. I don't think that was a present. Ha! Those guys aren't wonderful new friends, are they?
I wonder what the game's actually like. Shame I don't have a computer. Oh, but look, it's on Xbox Live Arcade! In 2014, Stamper would appear on the iconic Game Grumps YouTube channel alongside fellow Newgrounds personality Spaz Kid, in a special episode named Table Flip, where the participants would play board games rather than the typical video game format of the channel. More importantly, in 2014, however, would be the founding of Sleepycabin, a production company from under which the founders could produce content with the help of an actual studio and obviously the assistance of the other members. The primary output of the studio, however, would be the Sleepycast, a podcast in which the Sleepycabin members would answer fan questions and do all the standard podcast stuff.
Buried deep in that forest, tucked away neatly within a blanket of twilight, lies a quaint little cabin. And in that cabin
is a bunch of guys who's a bunch of bullshitter.
Welcome to Sleepycast, home of Corey's father's vagina.
No, really, is it time?
Today's topic is Corey's father's vagina.
A According to the other members, Stamper was integral to its production, especially in the early years, being the one who edited all the episodes as well as coding and designing the entirety of the official Sleepycabin website. That presumably was to serve as a backup of all the episodes, as well as a hub for potential new viewers to receive a crash course in its members. The website is now abandoned and many elements are now non-functional, but it still hosts all the episodes as well as a selection of fan animations. And also quite a sweet, if poorly aged, message from the creators. It's from this podcast where a majority of information concerning Will Stamper's life comes from, and the community that formed around Sleepycabin quickly grew to adore Stamper for his oddball sense of humour, occasional impassioned rants, and frequent butting of heads with the other hosts in the name of comedy. One only needs to look at the promotional video for the channel where Stamper is credited first to understand how important he was to the channel and its fanbase. For dramatic purposes, you could consider this the height of his career. But nestled in between all the success, cracks could sometimes be seen in his online persona, highlighting that he hadn't quite left his morally dubious streak behind in his teenage years. The most blatant example of this was a story he gladly recounts on the podcast of him being pulled over for speeding whilst well over the drinking limit.
That was what started it.
But then he asked you if you had been drinking.
Yeah.
And you said you were sweating bullets.
Dude, I was wasted,
because if it, I mean, that would have been your license.
About the limit, I was above and beyond.
Yeah, you would have been done. You wouldn't have a fucking license.
I was Denzel Washington flight limit.
You said you admitted to them, like, yeah, I'm drinking. Why don't you arrest me or something like that?
Yeah, no, you said something to them that you told.
The version of events as told on the podcast is a hilarious instance of Stamper's luck and happy-go-lucky charm, but as we'll see later on, his luck with the police wouldn't last. Following 30 episodes, the podcast would go on hiatus, with the creators citing the primary reason as wanting to overhaul the production so they could make higher quality projects at a faster pace. In August of 2015, Stamper would announce that he was leaving Sleepycabin and the Sleepycast podcast. Following this announcement, viewers began theorizing as to why he had reached this decision, varying from a falling out with the other members to him having an 18th century incurable infection that meant he could no longer carry on. Another podcast member would make an extensive post on Reddit confirming that Stamper was indeed leaving, but that his departure was an amicable one, and he was still on good terms with the other hosts. This version of events evidently was not the whole truth, as years later, other hosts would claim that his departure was more akin to him abandoning the company, with him dropping all responsibility for finances and projects still in production on the laps of his co-workers without due warning. This also doesn't really give answers as to why he left, but a possible reason could be due to his role at the Behemoth, as he moved to San Diego where the studio headquarters was located. Now, living in San Diego is already a terrible situation to be in, and from what it sounds like, his sudden departure had inadvertently strained the friendships he had back in Philly, leaving him alone in a new city without the support of those he was closest to only months ago. In the months following his move, little was heard from Will that would raise any alarms, and most people simply assumed he was contently working on projects with the Behemoth, and offhand mentions of him during this time likewise showed no sign of hostility or mental decline on his part.
And there was like this lady in this aisle looking at cereal, and then Stamper was like, "Oh, that one's good." And she was just like totally weirded out.
Yeah, of course she was weirded out. It's a weird thing to do.
But he was all bummed out because he's like...
What was unknown at the time, however, was Stamper's life in San Diego was slowly beginning to unravel, both financially and mentally. No, stop, we're not doing this bit, okay? So in the years following his move, his online activities remained fairly unremarkable. That is to say, he maintained a consistent online presence so that he didn't draw any attention to himself beyond his already established fanbase. But 2016 would end up being the final year of normalcy for Will, as soon things would begin to come apart. As mentioned, he had previously struggled with drugs and alcohol, and going off some stories told on Sleepycabin, he possibly never truly overcame them to begin with. But in San Diego, likely spurred on by a lack of socialization or just general anxiety about his new situation, he would begin to indulge in both vices again, and it wouldn't take long for this fact to become known to the internet. Starting in 2017, his online activity would begin to grow noticeably more erratic. Twitter was the platform on which he was most active, and it's where his mental decline would become most apparent. He would begin to tweet frequently, sometimes just a few times per hour, and sometimes an explosion of posts within the space of a couple minutes. The subject matter of these tweets would vary dramatically and would rarely read as cohesive thoughts, with it seeming more like a string of mental diarrhea now being broadcast to the world thanks to the miracle of the internet. He would also post a series of troubling videos to the website, most notably an incident with a police officer that took place within his apartment, where he was acting uncooperatively and generally just being a nuisance.
I mean, come on, dude. Give me a fucking break already, man. I'm trying to relax and sleep.
How tall are you there, Mr. Stomper?
How tall am I? I don't know, like 5 foot. Fuck you. Come on, man. Come on, man.
You're not in trouble.
I'm as tall as you are, dude. 6 foot? Yeah, you're not 6 foot, dude.
These videos and tweets are sadly now unavailable, owing to his later ban. Fortunately, detailed accounts and discussions of his ramblings still exist, and man, there are some gems. I'd like to shout out Kiwi Farms user Latent Appliance Fetish, whose documentation of his socials and associated screenshots were invaluable when making this. 2017 would see his last major voice role within a game, that being 2017's Pit People.
How do you like them, Hansels? Yes. Here, have some teeny tiny iced creams. I know you love them. Oh, fine, stop!
By 2018, Stamper's decline didn't so much appear as a slow descent into madness, but more closely resembled Oblivion at Alton Towers, if it shot down directly into Broadmoor. That's a little visual guide for all my British fans. What about the Americans? It's like if Space Mountain shot you straight into Crazy Town. So that wasn't even funny. His tweets would now often concern blatantly illegal activities, most commonly him asking for drugs from anyone in the San Diego area, as well as thinly masked threats directed towards anyone who would cross him. These were both literal threats implying he had a 2-inch blade and could kill if you crossed him, and also threats of blackmail, with him claiming he had files on top of files of dirt on his old colleagues, ready to release if they dared ever cross him. His finances were also seemingly put in jeopardy when he ran into issues concerning taxes, with him getting audited and being left to pay thousands to the IRS. Not paying taxes? Is this the rare based Stamper moment? So in 2018, Stamper would pop up again like a gopher in this Dan Bull Fortnite rap, where he spat a few bars before swiftly returning to Twitter.
I don't even know what Fortnite is, but it sounds like a bunch of lame kids having a slumber party and building forts with the couch cushions. I'm just playing. It's a game with a bunch of lucky button pushes.
I'm actually looking at this video closer. Some of these people have fewer subs than me. I want to rap about Fortnite. The rest of 2018 followed much in the same way as the previous couple of years, with him tweeting quickly and furiously. His Twitter would receive its first suspension following a public argument with another user over the semantics of empathy, and whether it was more appropriate to offer solutions to those struggling rather than just comfort them with warm words. Obviously, Stamper was in the warm words corner, rather than being given a practical solution in the face of adversity. He called the other user the F-slur, and a suspension soon followed, with Stamper lingering on the argument days after the other party had lost interest, and claimed to have life-ruining dirt on him, that conveniently never saw the light of day and was swiftly forgotten about. In January of 2019, Stamper would be let go by the Behemoth. The reasoning for this is still not conclusively known, but the reason given by Stamper was that it was a bureaucratic necessity owing to state work laws. But it also couldn't have helped that Stamper was involved in a sexual harassment suit within the company, as well as his pretty conspicuous online antics. He was in a Fortnite rap battle, how could they possibly keep him on? So without stable employment to keep him afloat, Stamper was now left to look to the internet to provide financial stability. The internet and financial stability are two words that rarely go together. His YouTube was still active at the time, and in 2019, likely spurred by his departure from the Behemoth, he would start to infrequently produce video content for YouTube once again. Of this content was a bizarre genre of videos involving puppets and grotesque subject matter, formed by himself and friends he evidently had in San Diego. Judging by some of his tweets, his drug usage was now beginning to escalate. Whilst before he had a pretty strong moral code about sticking to weed and cocaine, you know, the cool ones, he was now implying via Twitter he bought heroin, although upon returning home, flushed it down the toilet in an act of moral superiority. I don't think it takes a genius to see that being a frequent drug user and buying heroin is a pretty big indicator that you're probably going to try heroin. And much later, he would openly admit to trying meth.
Like, I see it, like, you go there to, like, have you ever had, crack or meth?
Have you?
Yes, I have.
2019 would also see Stamper insert himself directly into gang activity, when he harbored an unknown homeless woman who came to seek shelter in his apartment.
So what the fuck is your problem? Go.
My problem is people are trying to kill me, and my husband put something on me to make me fucked, and he's been doing it for 3 years, and I lost everything.
She would come to his multiple times, with groups of men showing up in force looking for her soon after, and posting up outside his front door.
He's coming to fucking kill me now, like right now, literally fucking kill me.
If I give you information, you don't pick your phone up, these are people that will have my head. These are people that roll for the Bloods. You can't name names when I tell you something.
You're putting my fucking life in jeopardy. You literally have motherfuckers coming over here to kill me?
Geez, meth and the cartel, there's also an alternate universe where Stamper became the Walter White of YouTube. I think you and I could draw furry porn together. His most notable creative venture in 2019 would come in the form of a voice acting role in this show I'm told everybody loves.
I will seize control of the entire west side of the pentagram by day's end.
But by the midpoint of the year, things were arguably at their very worst. His dwindling finances led him to cut down on more and more necessities, including his phone bill, meaning he could no longer be contacted nor attempt to communicate with anyone outside San Diego, leaving Twitter and other public forums as his only means of being contacted. Something that emerged during this time and is very present in how Stamper treated others was an inflated sense of importance, brought about, one assumes, by the popularity of his Twitter and the still active Sleepycabin podcast. Even at this stage in his life, it seems he truly did believe he was still as popular as he was a few years prior, and going forward he seems to carry himself with the same sense of importance befitting an A-tier YouTube celebrity, when in reality most have either lost interest or only follow him out of a morbid fascination with his activities. At this stage, Stamper was openly discussing contemplating on his Twitter. Seeing these distressing tweets, old friends would reach out in an attempt to ensure his safety and mental well-being. In response to these public expressions of worry and support, Stamper would grow openly hostile and lash out at those asking for him to talk. Now, lashing out when support is offered isn't exactly an uncommon phenomenon, especially when this support was offered on a public forum for everyone to see. So his vitriolic response to help is likely less Stamper just being an arse and more just a severely mentally distressed man grappling with how to open up and ask for support. Despite the public hostility on Twitter, Stamper would eventually become receptive to those trying to help him, and by the end of April 2019, he left San Diego to go and live with his sister in Houston, Texas. Here, he would still publicly tweet asking for cocaine, but hey, it's a small improvement, okay? Sometimes a man just gotta hit the slopes. His sister, whom he was staying with, was also active on Twitter, and the two would frequently use the platform as a means to publicly argue whilst living under the same roof, airing their disagreements for the world to see. From what we can tell, over the course of this stay, the pair's relationship would begin to deteriorate, in no small part due to Stamper's irregular behavior and drug use, presumably not welcome in a house with children. Oh yeah, his sister had children, by the way. Man, imagine being a kid and finding out that your uncle is a cartoonist and makes video games, only to be shown cotton roots. Stamper would eventually move out from his sister's home to go and live with a longtime fan. From there, the two would promptly start a Twitch named Dick Planet, clearly attempting to create a similar vibe to Game Grumps type channels, with the two engaging in a mix of scripted and unscripted banter whilst playing together and getting mad at the game, etc, etc.
Favorite non-pornographic magazine to masturbate to?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Good housekeeping.
What?
Just watch this. I'm gonna fucking whip the shit out of this piece of bitch.
He looks like a broken, bald Guy Fieri.
I know.
Whilst these streams wouldn't see huge success, the chat seemed to be overwhelmingly supportive of the two. And from the looks of things, Dick Planet did begin to gain a consistent fanbase. Call the format a derivative if you want, but it wasn't a total failure by any means. For a while, it did look like Stamper may have finally found a new comedic outlet. Unfortunately, this would all come crashing down when Stamper tripped over his own penis and found himself in the center of a controversy involving unsolicited nudes, and him allegedly attempting to seduce multiple women at once. According to his version of events, women frequently just send him nudes totally unsolicited because he's such a grade A alpha stud. And one of these superfans grew scornful when Stamper refused to start dating her. Last year, several women sent me personally unsolicited nudes after I, for the millionth time, made the joke sweet of send nudes lol. I should have put a stop to it, but hey, your baby was lonely. One of the women involved has made it her personal mission to destroy me. In this statement, he also claims to be recovering from severe alcoholism, and as a result was frequently experiencing seizures that only added to the stress brought about from this situation. The female in question released their private DMs that contradicted what Stamper said, but Stamper then produced several documents that she came back with another series of posts. Stamper produced several documents. She then came out with another series of posts. This is 4-year-old drama, so I'm assuming we won't be getting a conclusive answer to what really went on. But regardless, Stamper would leave Houston and the Dick Planet studio.
Speaking of Stamper, he's likely going to be on Thursday and every stream after that, so long as his setup stays consistent. We just gotta be patient with him and give him his time to get settled in and get comfortable in his new place. He's going through a lot right now, and I'm sure he misses the shit out of you guys, just like you guys miss the shit out of him. Please, for the love of God, don't target anybody. There's just been some kind of like stalkery stuff kind of going on. Yeah, don't contact anybody. Don't message anybody. We just want to nip it in the bud before it becomes an issue.
Whether this truly was due to the drama or a personal decision, we don't know, but this marks an end to the Houston saga. Now clear of Texas, Stamper would decide to bring his life full circle by moving back in with his mum in Wyoming sometime in July of 2020. Okay, so Stamper's mum has a Twitter, and it's like, it's deranged, but like the most 60-year-old Midwestern white woman type deranged, which is just brilliant. From his mum, Stamper would continue to occasionally stream with Dick Planet, however his appearances would grow more and more infrequent, until eventually he disappeared from their Twitch entirely. Dick Planet would gradually stream less and less, until eventually ceasing streaming entirely. As of writing, they've been inactive for half a year. Stamper would also participate in a long-form interview on the YouTube channel I'll Review Anything.
Like, I really don't have anything to hide, and 9.9 times out of 10, if I say something, then the grand majority of the world is gonna... It's like, why'd you go on Twitter and tell people that you were jacking off? It's like, who gives a shit? They probably just finished jacking off.
That other guy on the other end is also jacking off, going, oh, look, Stamper's jacking off too.
Where for the most part, he seemed to give a pretty normal interview in comparison to the shit that he had been through over the past few months. He would actually open up a little bit on his problems with alcohol, but for the most part seemed pretty unbothered by his own lifestyle.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of assumes you have like a strong history with like anything like weird. So I think like if people are like, oh, what has Stamper done? People probably assume that you have like a lot of life experience and that you've probably tried
if you want to call it experience.
Yeah. I mean, it was an experience, all right.
I do have that one rules. Heroin. No.
Yeah, that's probably a good rule to have.
That's kind of my one bugaboo. Once this guy was like, he cut this shit up on the back of a CD case, and he was like, here you go, man. He passed it to me, and this little light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, you go first.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's something a little weird about that. Turns out it was meth.
You said you did something stupid, so I'm assuming you did it.
Yeah, meth is bad.
How long was that?
News.
Did you get fucking hooked and shit?
No, God, no. No, that was like one of those. I want to see what the big deal is about this with Breaking Bad and all that shit.
Yeah,
I was like, dude, I understand why people do it. When I did it, I woke up in my room, and I did it like truthfully, I did it like once or twice.
Yeah.
Twice-ish, maybe 3 times. I don't remember, but it wasn't enough to, whatever. I just remember I woke up in my bed and I felt like shit, and I tried to get out of bed and my legs didn't work, and like I couldn't walk, and I was like, what the is going on, man? I was so groggy. I was like, man, I must have been asleep for like 18 hours. But from the time I did it to the time I woke up, I lost 4 days.
Jesus Christ, man.
In September of 2020, Stamper would announce he was preparing to set up a merchandise store for Sleepycabin, presumably trying to cash in on the last scraps of his fame. From the looks of things, the merch in question was just cheap red bubble tier print-on-demand designs of the company's logo, rather than deliberately designed apparel. It's also extra odd considering he hadn't been associated with the podcast or most of the other members for half a decade now. But surprisingly, it seems he was given the green light to go ahead by the other members. However, for tax reasons, he would need to state that this merch had no official affiliation to the Sleepycabin company, that had formerly been dissolved the year before. The Stampy Mart Teespring is still up and running if you want to buy a piss bottle. Okay, that one is actually funny. $8 shipping? It seems at this time in his life, Stamper really was doing side quests, as in late October of 2020, he would announce he had been ordained as a minister. This was by the Universal Church of Life, so it's not exactly a hard qualification to get. Now hold on. If anyone wants to be married by Node Armstrong, I'm free most weekdays, and I will force everyone in attendance to watch the Ahsoka video. While staying with his mum would seem like the clear safest option for the now aging Stamper, he would only stay there for less than a year before he set off again for a new home, this time in Michigan to allegedly take up work on a small farm. Cool. Dropping the stresses of modern life and retreating to a small town to enjoy the simple pleasures of animal husbandry seems like the perfect antidote for someone who was ruined by the modern world. But not even here was he able to let his past go and turn over a new leaf. Soon after arriving at his new residence, Stamper would begin his most notable online beef to date, by lashing out against Chris O'Neill, aka OniNG. At this point in time, Chris had become the most well-known of the old Sleepycabin crew, with his gaming channel arguably being the closest thing to carrying on the spirit of the original podcast. Stamper would begin his tirade against Chris Chris, claiming once again to be in possession of career-ending secrets, openly taunting Chris, threatening him that if he stepped against Stamper, he would destroy him, whilst making liberal use of the N and F words. Holy shit, why does nobody just take this guy's phone? Like, despite Stamper's constant threats directed towards him, Chris would never actually engage with Stamper directly, only making a brief tweet where he confirms he wants nothing to do with Stamper and wishes he seek help. Following this incident, his Twitter would be banned again, robbing him of his most vital tool to scream his drivel into cyberspace. Stamper wouldn't remain at the farm for long, leaving to go and couch surf with fans who were willing to put up with him and his antics.
Cold ass burger? Not anymore. Cause blip. Feel me, dog? You feel me, dog?
He would find himself living in Philadelphia once again, and it's also possible he was actually homeless for some time here. And in November, he posted a video of himself residing in a derelict building, presumably living on a diet of hard liquor and breakfast casserole. With few options left, Stamper would return once again to his mother, but his alcoholism was now proving to be too great to sustain a normal life. And in December of 2021, he would find himself spending a few months in prison after being caught behind the wheel whilst over the limit. After getting out, he seemed for a time to be making positive strides to improve his undesirable situation, with him living independently near his mum, and in early 2022 he posted a now deleted video claiming he was going to resume animation. However, as we'll see, this return to animation may not have been the best move. He would have another run-in with the police later that year, with him updating his followers via community post that he had been arrested by a pair of cops and spent the night in jail. The whole account does read like a desperate attempt to make "I was drunk and got arrested" into an awesome one-liner filled tale of badassery, with the cops getting enraged by his witty japes and bamboozled by his ability to slip out of handcuffs. Going off an account of someone with knowledge of Stamper's doings around this time, Will was once again seeing his life break down around him. His ambition to resume his animation career never fully manifested, and he was now unable to pay rent, as well as growing increasingly paranoid about going to prison once again. He would flee Wyoming and go live with a friend, however this arrangement quickly disintegrated and Stamper was presumably left without a stable home or support network, alone and left to spiral even further. In another post that same year, Stamper would publicly request fans to stop harassing Oni. I'm not kidding, he literally drops the "sometimes friends just grow apart, we're doing different things but harbour no ill will." So in December of 2023, Stamper, for reasons known only to himself, decided to upload one of his own explicitly graphic animations to his YouTube. To this day, we've never had a solid explanation for why he did this, but it wouldn't be long before his YouTube account was permanently deleted. And so, another one of Stamper's key tools of communication was stripped, and for a while he went dark. However, eventually Stamper would make his way to Phoenix, Arizona.
What brought you to Arizona?
Believe it or not, like, I came to Arizona. I feel like most motherfuckers that live in Arizona, they're here because either they were born here or they just end up here and wake up one day like, oh, I'm in Arizona.
The exact purpose of this move is not known at this time, but it's likely he went to stay with a fan/friends, and without Twitter or YouTube to satiate his need to share every detail about himself, he turned to Instagram as a means of communication. In late January, Stamper would appear on the YouTube channel Young Igloo, where he would sit down for an actual IRL interview. This is without a doubt the most lucid I think he's been since Sleepycabin. However, that could just be down to the interviewer not asking anything even resembling a question. So it's just Stamper joking about seeing his dad's cock and mum's boobs whilst the host giggles along. Great interview, just great! The highlight of this interview is when Stamper addresses his relationship with the old Sleepycabin crew.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Everybody that you went to high school with, do you keep in touch with them?
No.
Why?
Because I don't care about
Why
them.
not?
I care about one
Tell me
person.
why. No, tell me why.
Because they don't care about
You
me.
used to hang out with a bunch of people at lunchtime in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Why don't you talk to them anymore?
Because they don't talk to me.
Why don't you talk to them? Why don't you hang out with them? Why don't you hang out for my benefit? I need you to be with the people that I know you with.
So there you have it, guys. Sometimes friend groups just grow apart, and nothing else happened, I swear. What's worse than openly denying the reason why his friends no longer want anything to do with him is attempting to paint curious fans as obsessed parasocial orbiters who have no clue what's really going on and need to touch grass. It's not hard to deduce that he clearly regrets attacking his old castmates, but doesn't have the humility to admit he fucked up and just apologize. So instead he's attempting to rewrite history so that he just wants to crack on and live life. Why are so many fans obsessed with his private life? What, it was only months ago I was raving like a madman and uploading porn on my YouTube? So what, are you obsessed, bro? And that takes us up to now, pretty much. From what we can tell, he's just living in Mesa, just outside of Phoenix, and how he's paying the bills and putting food on the table is anyone's guess. He claims to constantly be receiving voice work, but whether this is true is debatable. At least according to his IMDb, his voice roles decreased dramatically since leaving San Diego. These days he seems to be traveling around a lot and interacting with stray cats, as well as getting a sick fucking ring with an eyeball on it. I mean, you can go snoop his Instagram yourself, it's not terribly fascinating. And honestly, I think that's what Stamper needs. A life that's not terribly fascinating, at least for a while. If you couldn't tell from this story, his life over the past decade or so has been pretty nuts. He hasn't exactly settled down anywhere, and this instability has acted as the perfect breeding ground for his bad habits to manifest, resulting in a downward spiral that nobody seems to have the power to fix. Since just as soon as he arrives somewhere, he's off. Stamper is now 41 years of age, and without any solid place to call home or concrete security for the future, his age combined with a lifetime of drinking and drugs mean he could soon start to experience severe health issues. Since landing in Arizona, his high-profile online antics have ceased.
Blip. This is my fucking hand. 5 servings my ass.
His Instagram, as mentioned, is pretty tame, and he seems to be traveling around the US doing what exactly, we don't know. Could be a Forrest Gump-esque side quest to discover himself, or he could just be bumming about from city to city, staying with fans and trying to stave off another homeless arc for as long as possible. There haven't been any reports of him using extensively, so it's possible he's actually on the mend and getting his life together, but we can only hope. But I think the most heartbreaking part of all this is how, unlike other lolcows, people don't seem to actively be preying on his demise. Like, people make fun of him, but making fun of and actively harassing and sabotaging are two separate things. I think it's because people, for the most part, remember Stamper as the energetic and wacky buddy type seen on Newgrounds and Sleepycabin. Seeing what he can be in contrast to what he's become is pretty heartbreaking. So it's natural for people to just want the old Stamper back. The old Stamper that, even when things were at their worst, would still sometimes break through, with a genuinely witty remark or intentionally bizarre comment that couldn't help but make you smile.
Give me a second here. I'm gonna scan my crowbar.
So for the time being, we'll have to wait and see what becomes of Will. All we can do is hope for the best, and wish him well. But Stamper, if you're going to be making more porn, I got this idea. So there's this character in a soap.